don't know that they're both coming. I think, I know one of them said she's coming, so.
The microphone's on.
Oh, can you hear me? How about now? Okay. So welcome. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jessica Della Valle. I'm the chair of the Jackson School Board. I can see we've got our members coming, so welcome. So I do want to just welcome everyone who is here, who usually this is a much smaller team, but we're very happy to see the faces, and it's very nice to see we've got some esteemed members of other school boards. So welcome members from both Conway and Bartlett. Before we get moving on to the content of the meeting, I do want to just thank the members of the committee, because there's been a lot of work that's been going on with everything that's been happening. And so thank you all for all the work that you've been doing and that you're going to continue to do, because we're really getting into the meat of a lot of the work that we've been setting up. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I also do want to point out that we have a minute taker, I believe. Yes. Okay. So Nicole, you're going to take minutes for us again. That's great. Thank you. I'm just double checking to make sure we have everyone here. So just so that everyone knows who's on the committee, I'm just going to ask you all to briefly, very quickly introduce yourselves. So I'm Jess Della Valle. I'm the chair of the committee.
I'm Michael Cortes, community member.
Nicole Opp, community member.
Jen Pribble, community member.
Allison Moran, community member. And as Steve and I are part of the employee.
Okay. So the first order of business is to approve the minutes from the August 19th board meeting. And it's the board that will approve these formally, but as we're going to just keep with the way we've been doing things, which is just to make sure that we all approve those as we go into the meetings. So has everyone had a chance to review those, and do they look good to send on to the board? Okay, great. Okay, so in terms of updates, we have a couple of things. First, I wanted to just, in the interest of ongoing communication with everyone, I wanted to reiterate that our next meetings coming up will be October 21st. We'll have a high school options meeting, just like tonight, but October, and to be followed by a regular school board meeting. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll have our meet and greet, which I think is highly anticipated, with both Kevin Carpenter from Kemet and Joe Manning from Freiburg. And Sasha will be mediating that for us, facilitating it, which is very much appreciated. So thank you for that. There's been a lot of work done to prepare for that. And then on November 18th, we will have 5 o'clock our high school options meeting, followed by a school board meeting. And then we're looking to have a special topic of special education. So we're still sorting that out, but that will be sort of our last big extended session. So that's 3 months of heavy-duty meetings, but we spent a lot of time going back and forth to try to figure out how to do this in an efficient way and cover a lot of content. But ultimately, to get everyone here and to get through what we needed to, this was the way we had to do it. So we're very grateful people were able to do it, and thank you very much to Amy and to Erin, who have really made a lot of this possible as well. If you all have any questions about any of that, please reach out anytime. So, okay, with that, I will turn it over to you, Michael. You're going to be giving us an update on tuition and the work that's been done, mostly by you. So.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you kind of caught a lot of it, just to make sure the context of everything else. So the process we've been following, just when I get into this wrong, everyone else, is number one, we engage the community to get questions and consider different questions about the various options we have, i.e. going to Freiburg or going to Kemet, or both. We got that through a listening session last March, and then we sent out a survey in June?
Well, we asked for feedback on the rubric.
We asked for feedback on the rubric in July or June-ish,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we sent that rubric to the schools.
Yes.
And we've gotten one response back, and the other is still working on it, correct?
Yeah, so there are 2 parts to it. There's part 1 and part 2, and they've come back mixed. So,
Mixed.
yeah.
So we're still working on that. The one thing we didn't include in the rubric was the financial question. It was just too complicated to include in the rubric. And I've been working with both Freiburg Academy as well as SAU9 to understand the current contracts and just be able to show this is where we are currently situated from a contractual perspective.
Right, yeah. So just to kind of add on to that and to give people sort of orientation to what Michael's about to talk about, part of what we heard from the community and even from the folks that we were talking with was that while there was information we could gather from the schools themselves, we really needed to do the work to understand what the parameters were in the landscape was as far as what things would look like. And it is, as expected, very complicated. So this update is meant to be a starting point, and if those of you who've been at most of these meetings know that what we've been trying to do is get information so that folks could start to understand what the issues are so we could respond to them and understand, and we could kind of get a direction for when you're actually making decisions. And so, so tonight is meant to be a starting point with information that folks can respond to, because we still have plenty of time to make the decisions that need to be made. So what we're hoping is that you will take the information and questions will be asked. We'll figure out what needs to be done with it, where do we go, are there more questions that need to be asked, what are we missing, what do we need to add, things like that. It's sort of a living document, I believe, that is getting started here. And then from there, this will go to the board hopefully next month or the month after. It will really depend on what happens. And you'll also hear after this that we have other pieces that we're filling in, including about transportation and obviously special education. So we felt like it was too much to put it all into one. So we're starting with this because this is a big piece.
That's correct. So, and we already talked about just financials primarily today. Of course, there's a lot more than financials in making this decision. I just want to stress that. So money is important, but by far not the most important thing. So. All right, I guess I got to stand. All right. There's a lot of detail here. We can go as deep or as not deep as everyone would like. But I want to start with some really key findings first to just kind of make sure, if you come out of this meeting with anything, I want you to just make sure you understand these 4 bullets, and we'll have a 5th one at the end. So first and foremost, how many kids are we talking about? Roughly speaking, it's 23 students that go to Kennett and 5 currently go to Friday. It is surprisingly hard to get that information, but that's what we believe it is at this point. There may be another child or two that go to a different school like Burke, but we don't know about that. These are the ones we know about. The second point is the Valley's cost of educating a student at Kennett is roughly equal to the price of educating a student at Freiburg, excluding any special services, transportation, continuing federal, state aid, that's roughly correct. I also want to call out cost versus price. I know there's a nuance there. To be clear, Freiburg is I always forget the list, 501(c), whatever the right number is. They're a nonprofit. They're not trying to make a profit. So hopefully their price and cost are roughly equivalent too. We don't have that visibility. We just know how much they charge us. Third point, and we can talk more about why this is, but under the current contract, as of today, Jackson currently pays about 50% more per Kennett High School student than their education costs. So if it costs $1 to educate a student at Kennett, Jackson is currently paying $1.50 for their student that's going. And we can talk about why. There's a good reason for this. And then because of that, under the current contracts as we see them today with no negotiations, so we see Mike from the Conway boards, we haven't negotiated anything, to be clear, right? That wouldn't be me, we'll figure that out. Sending this future student to Kennett will cost approximately 50% more than it would be to sending a student to Freiburg. They both cost the same amount, but we're currently paying 50% more to send a student to Kennett, and clearly it costs us 50% more to send a student to Kennett today than if we sent a student to Freiburg today. Make sense? Awesome. All right. Let's talk through the current Kennett contract. We have some experts here so they can tell me if I got any of this wrong. I've been learning. And huge shout out to Mike Wade and Amy for helping me so much over the past few weeks here, kind of getting this all together. Some weird feedback, thanks. But the gist of it is it was signed on May 21st. It was a 20-year agreement for the construction of Kennett. It was shared between the following towns: Conway, Jackson, Eaton, Albany, Freedom, Madison, Bartlett, Tamworth. It asked us to send 90% of our students to Kennett. And there were really 3 core components that we paid into. So there was a bond to pay for the school itself, the construction, which was Relatively speaking to all the other costs, about a medium-sized cost, that has been paid off. It's now 0. The second one is a maintenance trust fund. It's actually pretty small. And then the third one, which is the majority of what we pay today, it's an operations budget, high school UOC operations budget. And in the middle, you see the calculation method. So the way we paid the bond, which is now 0, and the maintenance, which is really small, is all based off the town's value. So we basically looked at the SAU 9, I'm assuming it's Mike Wading, it might be someone else, but let's just say, basically took all the information about what is the value of all the towns that you see here, and then they said, okay, Jackson's roughly, and we'll see on the next slide, 8% of all of these towns' valuations, so they pay 8% of the costs, regardless of how many students they send. And that's how the bond worked and how maintenance worked. Operations is a little different. The way that one works is, we'll show the budget in a minute, but if the budget is $15 million, to pick a number, which is pretty close to it, $5 million will be allocated to the towns based on the town's valuation, and $10 million will be allocated to the towns based on the number of students they send. And so you kind of get a mixture of the two concepts and how we determine how much each student costs. And then there was an opt-out in 23 from the contract, which we decided to take. Any questions so far?
Now, is that like common structure for these contracts, like across the board, like when you look at other towns and things like that? Or is that just how this one was structured?
So that's a good question. I don't have enough knowledge of these contracts to really know. I can tell you that the one which we'll get into with Josiah Bartlett for their middle school for 7 and 8 kids is not that way at all. But what I will say is most towns, if it's a single town, will go off of town valuation, right? And in fact, Jackson does in how we raise money for our town, right? So if person A has a house that's worth $1 million, they pay, let's say, $1,000 in property tax. Person B has a house that's $10 million, they may pay $10,000 in property tax. Behind the scenes, that money, the person who paid $10,000 in property tax is actually paying more for the school than the person paying $1,000. So if you're a town on its own, it's almost 100% town valuation, but we are kind of in this weird mix where we are a grouping of towns that kind of come together, and I think that's how this contract got made. I wasn't here, so I can't
And just one quick comment about the opt-out. So the opt-out was simply a triggering mechanism that would trigger us to start negotiations. So it doesn't do anything else other than we meant to have us to start negotiations one way or another. It doesn't mean really much more than that.
Okay.
All right, so this is small. We can go as deep here as you guys want, or hopefully not too deep, but I'm happy to. So these are the actual numbers that come out of SAU 9. Big thanks to Mike Wade who got them for me. If you want to see them publicly, Tamworth actually reports them in their annual report. I found them in Tamworth in all places, page 30. But in any case, you can see here that all of the towns are worth $8.8 billion, and Jackson as a town was worth $724 million. So we pay 8.1%, we are 8.16% of the equalized value. That said, Jackson has roughly 23 students, and this is a model. Of course, there's not a 0.04 student, so, but it's a model that the SAU 9 uses. But basically, Jackson's sending 23 students out of the 678 that go to Kennett this coming year, it's our guess, which will be about 3.38% of the population. So those are the base numbers we use. We talked about town valuation being used for the high school bond and maintenance trust. I said the high school bond's done, so you see a nice big 0. And then I said the maintenance trust is really, really small. It's $54,000, we pay $4,000. It is what it is. Now, when we look at the high school operations, like I told you, the projected KHS, or Kennett High School 24-25 budget is $15.4 million. And the way they came up with that, because it's not been approved yet, is my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong there, is they took the 23-24 budget, added in the CPI, basically what we expect inflation to be, and then add 2.5% as basically a buffer, right? Sometimes we're going to spend a little more, sometimes we spend a little less, etc. So it came out to 15.4. of which we have to allocate to the towns 5.4 gets allocated to the towns via equalized value, and 10 million gets allocated to towns based on the number of students we send. Average daily membership is the ADM. So, out of that, Jackson will likely spend, the cost to Jackson, quote unquote, would be $778, with 440, or $779 if you round up, with 440 coming from the equalized value and 339 coming from the number of students we send. So if you add all up that up together, this will come out to roughly 782 for Jackson, which is roughly 34,000 per student, before adjustments, which we're going to see here in a second. And then we have a bunch of fun adjustments and stuff that happen. It's kind of a one-time bonus we've been receiving, according to what I heard Mike, we've been receiving some additional federal stimulus, which is expiring now, which has been kind of giving us some extra money, which we haven't been spending. So we are kind of, taking the extra we had from the 22-23 budget and applying it to this coming year to say, hey, we don't need to raise as much money, we can use the money that we still had. Which only then means that we only have to ask for $650 this year, even if it costs us, practically speaking, if you look at the Kennan budget, $782, to pay for these students. The reason I delineated that out is because that 138 is a federal stimulus measure that's expiring soon, and so we expect to probably have to pay that going forward. So 782 would probably be the right number in future years, practically speaking. And then this is where we can start seeing some of that variation between the different towns, right? Because it's about that equalized value we talked about. So if you look here on this line, Jackson's paying roughly 34 before the adjustments, or 28 below. But you'll see Conway, which is the next one over, they're paying roughly 20,000 per student. Eaton's 28, Albany 20, Freedom's 33, Madison's 21, Bartlett 33, and Tamworth is 19. So generally speaking, what you'll see is Jackson, Freedom, and Bartlett are the higher ones, with Eaton kind of up there. And then the other locations have a lower equalized value to number of students being sent ratio. So, make sense? Any questions? It's a good place to ask questions if there are any. Oh, Mike, you can, good. You can correct me if I get anything wrong. Thank you. I feel like I'm getting this is like a test now for Mike, Like you can tell me how much I've been listening to this stuff. It's my thesis, yeah. All right. One thing I will, no, we'll leave that off, actually. We'll get to that one later.
So Michael, can you just explain the purpose of our committee and what we've been doing and as we transition to these next parts?
Sure.
With the facilitation committee and where we're at with the board and things like that.
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump in here for a second. So for those who don't know, if you haven't been at these meetings, the committee that you're sitting, the meeting that you're sitting in with right now, this is a committee that is meant to facilitate work for the board and to bring information to the board. It's not a decision-making committee. It's not even at this point a recommending committee. It's simply meant to facilitate decision-making for the board. So basically what happens is we have these meetings and then things go to the board and the board is directing any of the activities that are happening back here and in between meetings. And so as you can see, there's a lot of information gathering because part of what we have heard from the community and from the board was that there wasn't even a basic understanding of the issues that need to be resolved before any decisions could be made. So for those who don't know, the board asked the committee to go back and gather information about possibilities that include sending students to Kennett, sending students to Freiburg, and sending students to both, if that was viable. And so in order to do that, what we've been trying to figure out is, one, did they want us, right? We spoke with Conway. We went and spoke with Freiburg to even see if that was a possibility. So that was the very basic premise that we started with. And then from there, we were looking at is it a viable option at all? Is the transportation a possibility? And so it was perfect timing that Dr. Lay walked in, because for the board, he's been working on the transportation background information, which is equally difficult. And so, so what we're going to get into now, and I'm only seeing this because I peeked ahead of your slide, but is I think some of the possibilities. And this is just, again, information about what the landscape might look like. I'll turn that to you.
Just a question that is not mine, but I've heard several times in the community, and now might be a good time to address it. So I think the language in this room has been about exploring choice, and I think there's some confusion in the community, maybe in this room. Choice in New Hampshire has a couple of meanings, and the way I've understood it is that this committee is looking at one or multiple sending agreements, but I wonder if you could just define those two terms. So we have choice as a voucher system and choice as a multiple sending agreement. Could you talk a little bit about
You want to speak to it?
Go for it.
Yes, so that's actually a great point. You might notice that we're very careful in our language here, because we've had a lot of difficulties in the past couple of years over this particular topic. We are not talking about a voucher system. We're not talking about an open choice system. What we're looking at and what we're presenting information on is the possibility of tuition agreements to two possibilities. One possibility, or two possibilities in one year or in multiple years. So we don't know, because we haven't gotten that far, but it's not sort of a blank ticket or a blank check to go anywhere or to do anything. It would be a very specific agreement with any of the institutions that remain at the end of this exploratory process. Does that answer? Yeah.
All right, I'll add my one additional point on this. Practically speaking, as we look at future years, the way the current contract is structured, these numbers are actually still probably pretty low, is my guess. And the reason why is Conway went through a town revaluation last year, which I think, when I looked at the numbers, they were 2 million, then they went to 3 million, roughly 50%. Bartlett went through 2 years ago and it doubled theirs from 1 million to 2 million valuation. I called Julie Hoyt over at town office today. They're still doing the reassessment, but what she did tell me, and she can't tell me what the numbers are going to be, is we are currently at 57% of market value, our current assessments, and they try to get towards 100%. Which means if we were to get to 100% and we were at 57%, we would see an increase of roughly 75% in our town valuation. When you put that in the model, that increases that cost per student by about $10,000 or $11,000 per year. So we'd be well above all the other towns. So we don't know what that's going to come out yet, but practically speaking, that's something that we just need to be thoughtful of.
Might I just provide just one additional, just to piggyback on that?
Yeah, go for it.
That's assuming that the contract that you negotiate still includes this 35.
100%. Current contract, that's, yes.
Even that's under the current contract language, which is what tends to be negotiated.
Correct. We're just talking about what the current contract does. Nothing's been negotiated. All right, so current and Freiburg sending town, sorry, I used the wrong words. So Freiburg, I validated this with the head of schools over at Freiburg, Joe. What's Joe's last name again? Manny, thank you. But basically, this is how Freiburg's cost per student come out if Jackson were to send a kid using the publicly available data. So there's a $100 application fee, $19,900 tuition. So practically speaking, tuition is $20,000. There's a student life fee, $12.75, which covers most of your afternoon and weekend rec activities, so meaning like after-school sports and whatnot. And then they also have an option of academic support if someone needs some more one-on-one time in a specific class, et cetera. It is not special education, but it's if you need some help in a specific class. That's another $5,500. He said, generally speaking, about 15% of students leverage that. So for figuring out the cost of sending students from Jackson, and that would be option up to the board to figure out, I included in I assumed that 15% of quote-unquote students would use that, which comes out to about $22,000 per student. why I call it the quote-unquote choice model is if Freiburg is the school of record, Joe said there may be an additional 1 to 2K per student. I don't need to talk to you about the details of that. And special services would need to be figured out, and that's a much bigger discussion, which we haven't solved yet.
And just also, sorry.
Yes.
If you choose to continue to utilize SA9 services, whether it be superintendent services or other, that would be additional to this as well.
Correct. Yes.
Whereas in your PAME projected tuition that's included.
That's a good point. I haven't included that in the model, Amy.
Right.
We should add that.
I have a question about that. Is it entirely included or included only for those services that are currently already contracted with Tenet?
Oh, no, I'm talking about your SAU services.
So for
What
instance,
would that be?
so Amy, would it be similar to what we have with Josiah Bartlett right now, which is a 2% like administrative fee for SAU?
No.
Or do you see it different?
So Jackson, Mike, you can help with this, but all the sending towns currently pay a portion of the SA9 services. With that, you get superintendent services, the professional development that comes as part of the district-wide initiatives and things like that, new teacher orientation, all of that stuff that's under the SA9 budget. Each town pays a portion of that.
Okay. All right, we missed that one. So let's add
And
that.
so-
one.
But separate.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we read the Jackson School budget, those costs are itemized in the Jackson School Board budget separately from the current tuition agreement. So were that agreement with SAU 9 around administrative services to remain in place, it would not affect any of the numbers that Michael is showing and wouldn't affect the budget numbers for the community sending students to high school.
I'm not sure what you included in your.
So in the Jackson budget today, there's 3 lines. There's bond, maintenance, high school operations. And so I was just hyper-focused on
Right.
this. If SAU 9 is outside of that, that would be touched.
So if you look at our budget currently,
Yeah.
all of those contracted services that we get through the SAU for superintendent and administrative fees are itemized separately.
Okay.
So we're talking about a part of the budget that is unrelated to the budget lines that Dr. Fichette is referring to.
Okay, so we'll just follow up and validate that. Does that sound like a plan? I just don't have paper in front of me. Do you mind writing that down for Nicole?
I'm ready with that.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, it sounds to me like that I like that if this is true, that it's a separate line item, that keeps it nice and clean, assuming that even if we were to be a sending school to say Freiburg, then my understanding is that we still have SAU 9 costs associated with Jackson Grammar School or the middle school, those. I assume that means that if our high school students weren't being sent to Kennett as the assigned school, that we wouldn't be paying for administrative costs for those students at the high school. That would be a point of clarification.
I agree. So let's clarify that between now and the next time.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Okay.
James, do you know how big those costs are, just roughly, or?
I don't know the magnitude of those
All right,
costs.
we'll follow up and see,
But-
see if it, how much it changes the
So
model.
just so we say that.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Any other questions about Freiburg costs? Or prices? Kind of synonymous? Awesome. All right, so again, sorry, Sasha, for using the word choice. You were 100% correct. I didn't change my slides. In 3 seconds, I heard that. So, all right, so current costs. What are we currently paying as a town? And again, I excluded that adjustment because that's more of a one-time thing. Technically, this year it'd be 130,000 less, but that's a one-time, so I was trying to think about the future. So today, we believe that roughly 5 students are going to Freiburg, which costs roughly 110K. And that's all being paid by town people. It's not being paid by the town itself. We have 23 kids going to Kennett. That would cost, we said, roughly $782. So total public cost, excluding the bond and the adjustments, is around $782. but the total cost to our community is $893 because we have people paying privately, which is what it is. Okay, so if we decided to, again, to sending towns instead of choice, if we decided to send 14 students to Freiburg and 14 students to Kennett, under the current contract, we would have those 5 existing Freiburg Academy students paid for by the town. I'm going to get to the transportation number in a moment. I have very low confidence in that transportation number. Based on talking to James, I can tell you with certainty it's not going to be 0. And I can tell you with fairly high confidence it's not 100K. Could it be 25K? Could it be 50K? Yes, either of those are very valid. So I just want to put a number in there to anchor us in the right area, but it's not the correct number. I'm going to be super clear about that. So we would see about an additional, let's say 33K for transportation. Special ed is completely TBD. We would see an increase of $204,000 of public cost and an overall cost to the town, the community of roughly $94,000. What that means is those 5 parents who were paying for Freiburg Academy are no longer paying for Freiburg Academy, right? And it's going to cost an extra $200,000 to support them and the delta. Now, why is it $200,000 more? The reason is, for every student that we take away from Kennett, and there's another big piece here that's very critical. I'm excluding the 90% rule we have today where we have to send 90% of our students to Kennett. That clearly wouldn't work. So why is it so much more? Well, because the way we pay for the high school is based on appraised value and how many students we send. Regardless of how many students we send, we have to pay $440,000. So if Jackson sent 0 students to Kennett tomorrow, we still have to pay $440,000 based on the appraised value of the town, period. Each incremental student costs $14,000. So when I take 23 down to 14, I'm taking off $14.7 thousand from every kid, but I'm adding $22,000 for every kid that goes to Freiburg. So under the current contracts, the numbers don't look great. We're asking the town to pay an additional $200,000. Make sense? Kind of depressing this part. All right, I want to talk about real quick. It's a little outside of our space, but I thought it was important, the Josiah Bartlett contract we have. I've never met him, but I saw a video with him, Scott Grant, so he's really proud of the contract you all made at some point. He loves that it's 2 pages. It's really simple. It's a 3-year contract. We say we'll send all of our students, 7 and 8 students, and Jackson pays Josiah Bartlett's cost per student plus a 2% administrative fee. So if it costs $20,000 to send a kid to Josiah Bartlett, Jackson pays $20,000 plus 2%. Probably do that in my head, but let's just keep it simple. Make sense?
Just a quick question on that. There's no 90% rule with our middle school contract?
With the middle school contract?
Yeah. That we
No,
just said
the language is kind of just like, the language, and again, I leave it to the experts, I only looked at the contract myself, was we'll send all of our students, but if they go to private or they do their own thing, you don't have to pay for them, basically.
Yeah.
So I want to be super clear, this next part has not been negotiated. There's been no talk about this, aside from Scott Grant saying Bartlett wants to do this in the newspaper. But what I did model out, just for fun, is what would it look like if Jackson had the Bartlett-style contract with Kennett, right? And if we had that Bartlett-style contract with Kennett, what we would see is Freiburg would still cost the same amount for 14 students, $309,000. But our cost with Kennett would go from $644 down to $325. Because again, that when we looked at that previous slide, before the adjustments, the average student in Kennett was roughly $22,000, and we add 2% on that, so it comes up to $23,200. You kind of look in this middle here. Versus if we reduce to 14 students here, we're paying $46,000 per student. So if you do that, the public cost will come down to $667. you would pay for transportation, again, very low confidence number in that. And you would pay for those additional 5 students that are currently paying out of pocket, and you would save $115,000, and as a community, you would save $225,000. So that's just how those numbers play out. Again, this has not been negotiated. I'm not going to put Michael in the spot at all.
So strictly cost per pupil is what you're illustrating there?
Yes. If you go back all the way to the beginning to here, and you said, instead of, this is what it costs before the adjustments this year to educate a student at Kennett. If you took that plus 2%, which just happens to be the contract with Bartlett, the numbers, that's how the numbers would play out, if that were negotiated. Any questions about that? This is a good thing. So basically, coming back to the slide I started with, just to bring it home. 23 students at Kennett, 5 today. Cost of educating a student at Kennett, roughly $22,700, $22,800. It's roughly the price of educating a student at Freiburg, $22,100. And again, this is a model, guys. I might be plus or minus $1,000 per student. I don't think any of us are going to quibble over plus or minus $1,000 if it means it's the right education for our kids. So I'm assuming those are equivalent. You disagree? That's fully your right to disagree. Jackson's currently paying 50% more per student than their education costs. We're paying roughly $34,000 a student today before adjustments versus the $22,800. So under the current contracts, if we sent a future student to KHS, ignoring the 90% and also the equalization stuff of the town value, it's roughly 50% more per student in the current rates, 34 to 22. And then I just added, if we had a Josiah Bartlett style contract, which has not been discussed between anyone, just kind of putting it out there, we could likely support all 28 students versus the current 23, provide school choice, and save taxpayer money. That's what I found.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, in the interest of time, let's turn to what we would like. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Seriously, this was a lot of work, and I think it will continue to be a lot of work. Just a quick comment. You can see that we're missing some very key pieces, right? I mean, special education and transportation are going to be huge pieces of this. So, at least by my observation, that's something we really need to keep at. But this at least gives us a good starting point. And so I think my question to the committee members is, what would you like to do with this information at this point, right? Because our job is to figure out how to move things forward and share information with the board in a helpful manner. So is there more work to be done before we go to the board with something? Are there pieces we want to go to the board? How do people want to move forward with this piece as far as tuition goes?
I guess my question would be back to you in that, do you feel that we need to wait for the special education and transportation pieces before this goes to them, or would the board like to see components as they're received?
Well, let me throw it back to you all as the committee members. What do you all think?
Personally, I think it would be better to have all the information before it's sent to the board. I'm sorry, I know it's more work for you. And
No,
this was a fabulous presentation, but it's good to see the big picture and forwarded.
What do you think, Michael?
So I think transportation, just talking about James and other thoughts, we just had a really brief conversation about it, is I think we know enough about roughly what it would cost in the fact that we know it's not zero. We're like 99.9% sure it's not going to be 100,000. It might be 25, it might be 50. I don't think that moves the needle enough for us to fundamentally change a decision. I think there might be logistics in whether we can do it or not, and I don't know if we fully solve that. But if we know we can do transportation, I feel like that number is close enough, plus or minus. You can say plus or minus 25K from 33.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And then what about the special education piece that,
So I think one of the key questions here really is, what is our role continuing to be as a committee, right? So we're gathering information, right? Ultimately, the board has to take this and make a decision about a certain question. They're gonna have to answer questions. So, I think transportation is still being worked on, right? And I think we'll just hop to that for a second. Basically, update my understanding. Do you want to speak briefly about transportation?
Yeah, sure. So I want to thank you, Michael. I thought that was a really informative, terrific presentation. As I understood it, as we were looking at the transportation piece, it seemed most important to most of the members of the board that Jackson, as an equity piece, commit to being able to transport students to any school that the community might choose to give Jackson students the option to attend. We didn't want a circumstance where families had to decide which school to enroll their kid in based on whether they could transport their child privately. And I think that we have enough information now to be able to affirm that commitment as a community. I think that getting at a more exact number, I met with the people from the SAU and the transportation office. They were incredibly helpful and knowledgeable, and really, I think, committed to not just getting our community and our children where they needed to go, but committed to their safety, committed to their comfort and their well-being. And I came away from that meeting just very, very impressed with the people there. But they also really persuaded me of the complexity of the job that they have. And so I think in terms of the specific modeling of getting closer to the budget number than what Michael has presented, it would really either involve a great deal of work on their part to give us exact numbers, and I feel as though their plates are very full, and so I would personally like to avoid that. But what I heard from them is if it was the need of the community to create a transportation option, that they would be partners with us to help us. And I think Michael presented numbers that give me the impression that the board has the luxury of feeling very confident that we can offer that to the community without totally turning the town budget and the school budget upside down.
And I didn't go through it today. I have a slide of how we came up with that number for transportation. It's in the deck, which we can share.
Jen? I mean, I'm sorry, no.
Sorry.
So I was looking at you when you
I
said
know, I
you
was
go up
like-
and then you said,
Is it possible for the board to kind of pulse in with the, to start the negotiation talk while we're gathering the information to see if the Bartlett style contract is even feasible or in the cards? I feel like that would be a good starting point for a lot of the other information that we're gathering, and then we could work on things parallel and not drag it out longer than it needs to go.
yeah, I mean, one of the things I think one of our main jobs was to start to try to get information to the people so that we could get feedback from the citizens and so that the board could answer questions. And to a large extent, we've set those things up, right? We're going to have the New Hampshire School Board Association here tonight. We'll have the schools come and visit us. We're trying to have open meetings. We'll have special education conversations. So this might be something we can say, we've gotten pretty far. What do you want? Give us direction. And give it to the board and let them tell us what to do at this point, right? I think that's a fair thing to do. We work at their direction. So there's not a ton left for us as far as gathering information. We can keep doing that. But this was a pretty thorough job, more than I would have anticipated. And I think more than anything, at least for me, and this is saying something because I sat on the original committee that was looking at tuition. So, and I read all of the New Hampshire School Board things. Whatever we do as a community, it's really just helpful to understand where we are and how these things work. So thank you for sort of really breaking that down to understand, because just understanding how it works, I think it can help with the board and moving forward to negotiate however. So what do we think of that? Do we want to just sort of leave it and give it to the board and say, give us direction? Direction?
Maybe on that specific thing, like we'll still collect all the information which will
Yeah.
help the board as they continue their decision-making process.
I mean, maybe you can keep moving along to keep numbers updated, and if there's anything else that needs to be tweaked.
Yeah.
Does that work two ways, Steve?
Yeah.
And I know you're working on transportation, right? And we're still working on putting together the presentation on special education for November. But the other thing, and I think this might be a good time for us to transition to the other update, which is on communication.
Sorry, there was just one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
So to finish transportation, we're good. I think special services is the only other thing. So, and I love Amy's feedback too, yours and others, is if we keep Kennett as the school of record, again, this is just talking hypotheticals, providing information. We understand how special services works. But if we would want to make Freiburg the school of record, there's still a lot of open questions on what it would take from the special services perspective. And do we want to continue to figure that out? I think that's the only one I've got
Okay.
So
left.
is that special services included under being the school of record, or is that tied in with our money that we're paying separately to SAU 9?
I'm going to butcher this so if she
That's
doesn't
the part that I
mind.
highlighted from
Yeah.
earlier in the
Yeah,
presentation.
I'm going to butcher this so if she doesn't mind. Amy, you can totally punt this if you want to explain that, or Jess, because I feel like either of you will do a better job.
So I'm not sure I totally understand the question. So are you asking if,
Is it tied into being the school of record, or if we had a different school of record but maintained paying for services through high school with SAU 9, even with a different school of record?
you're obligated to provide special education services regardless?
Yes.
So what's included in your current tuition agreement with Conway includes some general special education services that Conway staffs for you currently.
Okay.
And you're billed for anything that we don't currently have on staff in Conway. So whether that be a one-to-one paraprofessional for a student or some related services, but you're obligated to provide that regardless of where your children go to school. So the question really is around if we know how that looks in Conway, and we know confidently what you're billed for each year for services that aren't currently provided, all those above and beyond kind of pieces. But what that looks like at a different school is really up for them to negotiate. I'm not sure how they.
Yeah, so we're required by law to have
I
a school of
fluctuate.
record. It's all however it's contracted and what people agree to. But there are a few mandates we have. One is that if we have a school of record that we must have, and then the Department of Education has to approve what plan we come up with. Jen?
Yeah, so I would say that based on what we're talking about with special education and the fact that there's a lot of funding and state funding and whatnot that goes into that component for the costs of either school, I think that the board should get this information with a great big asterisk that says it clearly does not contain information around special education and associated costs, and that will come in a different package. And that way, the information is presented with where we are now. They know that we're moving forward to get that information, but it is, I'm really looking forward to that presentation, but I know it's maybe more complicated and nuanced. And so I think that presenting that information as an addendum to this would be, I think, in my opinion, I think that would be the most helpful.
I mean, the other thing is if this is presented next month, because we're not able to present it today, there might be updated information by that time. So things are moving very quickly. So does that sound like a good reason? Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, I do want to make sure that we have time for public comment. But before we get to that, Allison, could you just speak briefly to communication?
Yes.
You okay with quick communication update for folks?
Sure. All right, Allison Moran, if you don't know me. We've had some, not issues necessarily for communication. Jess has done an incredible job creating an email with links and everything linked up to it. But if you are not getting that information, I actually have a list if you would like to sign up for it with your name and your email address.
And we want to create an email address for high school options community, Jackson Borough School type of thing. So if you do not mind, and we will still continue to add things to the SAU 9 website, but it's not me who does that per se, it's somebody else at SAU 9, but it is a little bit of a horse trail to get to that information, so, and I understand that. So, if anybody.
Yeah, so this was Alice, a good idea, she created this, and so thank you for that, Alice.
Yes, of course.
But it's just one other way that we wanted to try to help folks stay in the loop, but you can always contact any one of us. I think folks have been doing a very good job of calling me, or texting me, emailing me. I'm doing whatever I can to respond and share that out, and it seems to be working, but we definitely want you to know what's happening, so please feel free to do that. And then with that, we'll take comments at this point, and then we'll have a brief break before 6 o'clock meeting. So any comments that folks want to share?
Right.
Question. What is the deadline for
I think that amount, because I there, so during public comment, we won't just hold this, but we'll share that information out.
Aside from the transportation and special education pieces, which are huge, just a brief bit of context, when this past contract was negotiated 20 years ago, the COLI is this one of the 3 signatures to that contract. The 2 components that were very different than they are now was the ratio, this equalized valuation ratio, and the number of students who were sending candidates. They were almost not flip-flops, but they were very staggered in a different way. That's not covering, but I would say just back in the napkin, a more fair equalized valuation in today would be more like 80-20 than 65-35. And we were basing it back then on 50 students, and now we're down to 20, 28, or 23. So it's all in the numbers, as you certainly know. The one thing that the other key piece to this, I think that would be critical in talking to Conway about the contract is the length of the contract. I don't think any of the 7 towns are happy with the length of the contract, but and concurrently with the bond of the high school, which was $48 million. So we were costing that out based on the bond, and now that the bond's essentially paid off, and we just have a small share of maintenance, I think that is a point of negotiation.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, just a quick thing. The special education component I see is critical to any of these discussions. Really understanding how the services are going to be provided in whatever setting it is. I mean, we're dealing with 2 different states too. I don't know how that plays into it. I don't see how any decisions can be made until that is really upfront and understood. So. And thanks for all the good info on the school website now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's positive feedback. Thank
Yes.
you. Ah,
Yeah.
yay.
Too many patients. I said, it was great. I can find it.
Great, thank you.
I have a question, because I was late coming to the meeting. Does Michael have a thin layout of that we all could have so we can see like a print off? So we can see like all the details that he has come up with so far?
We can put the presentation up online or wherever it goes.
Yeah, so I usually include a link to anything presented in the meeting minutes, because that all goes on the website where everything is currently located. So if you sign up for the email that Allison has,
Okay.
it'll lead you down that horse trail.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, with that, we will thank you all for all of your participation, and Michael, thank you for all the work that you did. All of these bits of information, and this is not bits, this was a lot of information, gets everyone thinking and participating, and that is incredibly valuable. As I spoke with someone about before this meeting, we were on a telephone call. This is all really good civics. So wherever we end up, at least we're doing it together in a positive way. So thank you for that, and for everyone that helped. So
I just want to call it in because you keep saying thank you. No, thank you. Thank the other Mike over there. Making sure you're helping me and getting through all of this. And, also, I saw the newspaper. Congrats on the promotion too.
Always working. So, all right, we'll take a very brief break, and then we'll be back for our regularly scheduled 6 o'clock p.m. school board meeting, which is next week. Thank you.
How was your band? We were so confident. I was like, all right, well, come right over. Did everybody sign up? I just thought it was going Oh, right.
At least one of them didn't play us.
Updates on the high school options committee, stuff like it's all the same. Pardon?
And it was at least like the best team in the AFC East. You know, I also my favorite thing Barry? How are you? Good to see you. Been a while. Yeah, I'm still in. Haven't graduated. Come on, I'm the biggest. Yeah. Going to now this is where the company goes out. Where you
I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone.
Yeah, she's doing real, no big deal stuff. Yeah, traveling all over. She was just. Oh yeah.
All right, welcome everyone. Yes.
Believe it or not.
All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to see you, Barry. Welcome. All right, we'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'll call in order that 6 o'clock meeting of the Jackson School Board. Tonight's meeting is going to be expedited. And hopefully we'll get through everything. If we don't, we will have to come back and discuss it. Hopefully we'll be able to get through everything. Very quickly, I'm hoping there's someone that can just tell us something good besides this lovely lady that has attended our meeting, this last meeting and this meeting. So just real quickly, is there anyone who can share something that's going on with our children so we can remember why we do these meetings and why we're here?
I have something.
Yes.
The Jackson Jaguars soccer team are currently wearing brand new jerseys, and they're with our wonderful coaches and playing an away soccer game this afternoon, which they are all, they've been working hard on the field, and they're all super excited about.
And I can add to that that they won.
All right. I do want to thank, we've had a really fantastic high school options meeting. We had some members of other school boards visiting us, and we had some higher attendance, which was lovely, and participation, that's really great. And I just want to thank everyone that's helping to make these meetings happen. So thank you for that. Again, this will be expedited, but we will try to get through everything as quickly as we can, because we also are welcoming Barrett Christina, who is the New Hampshire School Board Association Executive Director. He's an attorney as well, and he has been with them for about 20 years, and he really has been invaluable. Actually, in both of my tenures on the school board, I'm frequently going to them for support and help, and in this instance, he is brought himself here to talk to us. So he's going to be coming out at 6:30, and you'll see him when we get there. There are, I did want to ask, there are any modifications to the agenda. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add or change? I just have, I want to make sure that we touch on goal planning, which I think will come up under community assignments. And we have a letter from the town that I want to make sure that we follow up on, as well as a letter that came in that I want to make sure we follow up on. So those items we will make sure we cover. Why don't we get to including minutes? We have 2 sets of minutes, one from August 19, 2024, and one from August 29, 2024, which was our goal planning meeting for the year. I'm looking for a motion to approve those minutes. Second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Okay. That looks unanimous. Is Micah here? She is. Micah, welcome. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you were here. I want to welcome Micah Burhart, who just had shoulder surgery this morning, but is making the effort to zoom in. So, I think it was today. She just had it. So, thank you, Micah, for being here.
It's dedication.
I know. I told her. I said, Micah, I don't know how much gets you out of this, but Micah, if you
I'm not going to go on video because that's too much.
Okay.
But I can type my approvals, or I can say them. Tell me what's best. Is someone monitoring the chat that I can just type my approvals?
Can we accept that? It's Micah Burhart approvals, and normally we would have to do roll call, where she would say her name.
I can do roll call.
Can you do that? Okay, so if you can just say Micah and approve, that would be great. So,
Yeah.
are you in favor of that? Minutes?
Approved.
Okay. and we'll have to do, is there an issue with hearing?
No, I just wanted to make sure that Micah knew that her in-call messages are appearing on screen.
Oh.
So that, or bring that to the administrators.
Okay.
Just the chat.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
which I sort of thought, that I'll speak up if I can't hear there, because sometimes something is happening where it's like kind of staccato. So if something goes bad, I'll speak up there.
Okay, so for any other motions, we'll do it before roll call, but in the interest of time, if everyone's okay, we'll just keep moving. So how about citizen comments? Does anyone have anything that they would like to say?
So is that's a 5-all vote for approval of the minutes?
Yes. Thank you, Amy. Okay, we'll have citizen comments at the end as well. All right. Let me make sure we're missing anything. Okay, presentation of school programs, FYI items?
None tonight.
Okay. Old business, we have committee assignments, and under that, I'm going to add just a quick update on the goal planning, which, Melinda, if you don't mind sharing.
We had a very productive goal meeting on August 19th, 29th. We were very clear that we wanted to come up with school board norms for meetings, which I think were up there at the very beginning of our agenda. I'm not going to read them here, but they are online. And the goals that we came up with, and this was just a preliminary meeting, we realized we need to meet again and hopefully soon. But the goals that we all agreed upon were, first, to successfully complete the high school options work. Second, follow the strategic plan as closely as possible. Work on the budget, obviously. Improve school board function and relationships. And this would obviously be addressed at another meeting sometime in the near future. And streamline our committee system and work on open communication with the community and with each other.
Great. Okay, thank you. So to that end, as Melinda noted, you'll see the norms at the top of the agenda. The board voted to include those at the top of all of our agenda so that we can use them to anchor our conversations and remind us how we wish to be and aspire to be in our meetings. One other item as we're moving forward, they sound fairly generic in terms of goals, but there's a lot of discussion in the meeting with a number of items to follow up on. One of them involved working on the committee structure that we have, because we have about 20 to 25 committees. And so that was an item that Amy and I actually were able to start tackling this month. In the interest of time, you'll see it's tabled tonight, but we will come back to that, to the board with a recommendation for Amy and myself to sort of fold in some committees to make the board efficient. So, okay, number 6, are there any comments about any of that? Number 6, instructional issues?
No.
No? Okay. Great. All right. Personnel actions.
I just don't know if you want to speak to your personnel committee. There's no formal action that needs to be taken by the board currently, but the personnel committee did create an ESOL tutor position and just discuss some other, moving some things to your policy committee for review.
I think we can maybe talk about we did receive a letter of knowledge, and we received a letter from Carrie Scribner, and what I'd like to do is that there was a request to have the policy reviewed, so I'd like to have that reviewed by the policy committee. And just in general, maybe if you could review that and see if there are other issues that we can make sure we follow up on and come back to the board. And I know we've got plans for that.
And we were working on trying to set up the policy committee.
Yeah, and I guess I wanted to speak, just make a comment generally. The question was really about employee benefits, and I think it's really important that we as a board, I've thought about this a lot, and I think that one of the really important wealths that we have as a school is our personnel, whether it's our bus drivers, our custodian, our teachers, certainly, all the way up to our administrative staff and our principal. And over the years, I've come to understand that benefits programs are really most powerful and most important when they're utilized fully. And so I think it's great that we have an opportunity as a board to sort of take a fresh look at our policies so that we can make sure that every employee, past, present, and future, has the opportunity to utilize our benefits plans as fully as possible.
Thank you. All right, on to number 8, business affairs.
Jess, can I interrupt you for a second? Micah just texted that she can't hear properly, and so if somebody could work on the audio for her.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's in and out, and she's not getting it.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah, apologies. So you pressed it. All right. Micah, can you hear me? Hey, girl. Is that better?
Yeah, this is better. That's better. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to speak up as well. All right, we're going to move on to business affairs then. The 2024-2025 budget status report.
So there's a report in the board packet. It's early in the year and not everything is encumbered. The next meeting will get payroll encumbered, which is the majority of the expenses.
Could we just welcome you, Michael, to the meeting? So this is Michael Wade,
Yes,
right?
correct.
Who is not super new, but you've been here a couple months?
I've been in the district for just since July of last year.
Okay.
But I've changed titles the third time.
Let's keep recycling. But sort of new face in Jackson at our meetings, so
Yeah.
welcome and thank you. And I know you've done significant work helping us sort of understand a lot of things we're dealing with, so thank you for coming out tonight.
And then I didn't get the expenses and receipts prepared. I'm going into C. This is kind of a big thing. Consider retaining fund balance from 630. So I have a projected fund balance of about $350,000 from the 24 budget. On last year's warrant, there was one warrant article, number 6, for the bus capital reserve for up to $15,000 to be funded from unreserved fund balance. And then you have the retained fund balance of up to 2.5% if you should so choose. So if you guys could vote on that tonight. And that's 2.5% of the net assessment, which is basically the new monies that you received from last year, which was just over $3 million. The 2.5% would be $75,173.
Could I just hold you up for a second?
Yeah.
So does that need to be voted on tonight?
Yes, please.
Okay, could you back up for a second?
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
say that again to me then, just so I could really get those numbers.
Yep. So the estimated fund balance right now is about $350,000. $15,000 will go to that warrant article, and then the board has the option to fund up to 2.5% from that fund balance. That number is $75,173. That's the maximum you can retain if you choose. And then the balance of that would get returned to taxpayers to offset taxes.
So we have some new board members, and folks that have not been through this.
Yep.
I know Jerry and I have been through this.
I have not.
Do folks have questions or anything you want to?
I only heard about half of what you said.
Yeah, so I think it would be helpful to explain it to Melinda or perhaps even James. I think it might be the first time you're going through this as well. Or Jerry, I don't know if you want to speak to this at all.
Sure. So as Michael said, we have about $350,000 in unspent funds from last year's budget. We can retain up to about $275,000 of that if we choose to.
$75,000.
Oh, sorry, $75,000 is what we can retain up to. It's limited what we can spend the estimated fund balance on. If there's an emergency expenditure like a furnace goes or something like that, those are the kind of things that you could spend that money on. We do have a maintenance trust fund for those kind of funds as well. But when you spend those monies, like let's say the basement floods out or something like that, or our playground washes out and we need emergency funds, you can go ahead and tap into that, but you need permission from the State Board of Education to spend that money first. Typically, we don't really retain funds unless we have a reason to, and one of the reasons that we sometimes retain funds is to fund things like the Whitney money, so that we can put it into the budget where we want to use it before we get funds from the Whitney Foundation. So typically we retain about $10,000 for that, about $15,000 usually for to fund buses for next year. So when we come back here next year, like let's say we only had $25,000 left. What we want to do is not retain any of that because that's why we retain it this year. So anybody that we retain this year is, like last year I think we retained what, 25 last year.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So what I would recommend is that in fact, it's going to make a motion to retain $25,000 for the SEA fund balance.
Okay, I'll second that. Do we
And
go
the
to
rest
the
of the
discussion?
discussion?
The rest of it goes back to the taxpayers.
Any questions? Yes, so there's a motion that I seconded. So anyone have any questions or comments about it? Okay, so all in, Micah.
Did you get that, Micah?
Did you hear
I don't have any questions. I'm good.
Okay, so then we'll take a vote then. All in favor, we'll do roll call, starting with you, Micah.
Yes.
Okay, Micah, yes. Jessica says yes. Barry?
Yes.
Melinda?
Yes.
Jane? Okay, so that's unanimous. Okay.
To retain 25,000.
Yep.
Okay.
And then along with that, just to send in those reports to MS 25 and to DOE 25. I have 2 forms that if you guys could sign before we head out tonight.
Sure, we can do that, no problem. Yep, thank you. Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Jerry. Okay, all right. So, I think we just have an FYI on the school lunch program.
Yeah, I'll bring that in next time too, and have final numbers for you guys on everything from last year.
Okay, great.
Jessica, I'm sorry, I did misstate where the money goes. The money doesn't go back to the taxpayer necessarily. It goes back to the town's undesignated fund balance, and the selectmen have the opportunity then to give it back to the taxpayer.
No.
No, they don't. They have to use it. Okay.
If you don't use it, it stays in your fund balance for the next year. So either you can retain it.
No, I mean the balance that we're not retaining. So like the 325 is going back to the town, and I think that.
Yeah. So if for easy numbers, like if your budget's 3.2 million, you're returning 200,000, then you only have to raise 3 million instead of 3.2 on taxes because 200 is already funded from that balance.
So it rolls into the next year now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so if you take 25,000 out of it, you have to raise 2 million, 25,000.
So I did say it right the first time.
Yeah.
Not the second time. Thanks, Michael.
Yes. Yes, the money stays with the school district.
Okay, administrators reports. You want to go first?
Okay, I'll be brief because we know Barrett's here, but just a couple things to put on your radar. The MWB STEM Expo, the date for that this year has been set. It's March 19th. Emily Calderwood in Bartlett does a great job organizing that, really community valley-wide event. And this year, all Jackson 4th through 6th graders are participating. So I think the first year that the STEM Expo was a thing, there was, 30-something presentations or something like that. Last year, I think we had 90-something. So we've there's so much participation now, we've outgrown the space, which was at the Living Shores Aquarium for the past couple of years. So we think it's going to be at the Grand Summit, I'm pretty sure, on March 19th. So bookmark that date. Just wanted to say a kudos to Mike Wade. We've had a lot of changes at the SAU. a lot of shifting of positions and roles and responsibilities, and we're actually still quite understaffed, so we just appreciate everyone's understanding as we are just trying to tackle all of the things together. But Mike's wearing a lot of different hats right now, taking over a lot of Jim Hill's responsibility with facilities and maintenance and vendors and bidding and all of that, while also doing all things finance while we look for an SAU level accountant. So if you know anyone that wants a job, send them our way. It's a fun place to work. We have fun in the office. But yeah, so kudos to Mike, wearing a lot of hats, working triple time. And then I'm not sure if it is something Aaron will talk about, but Jackson will be jumping on board with a new SAU-wide system of reporting student growth and achievement, which will change the look of the student support card. So we will be sharing more information on that, doing a presentation like we have in other districts about how that will look, but ultimately it will provide families and teachers with a far more in-depth look at a holistic view of all data related to student growth and achievement. And it's a system that is built, well, we've built it ourselves with the help of some software developers, but essentially it will track student growth throughout their entire career in Jackson and beyond. So, you know, you can kind of see a longitudinal look at how kids are doing over an extended period of time. So more to come on that, but just look out for that.
Thank you. Does it have a name?
So it's just, well, the folks that are helping us develop it, they run an organization called B21, Building 21. But the dashboard and the system is customized to what we need here in SAU 9. And it was piloted last year in Conway K6. This year, Bartlett, Conway and Bartlett K6. And then this year, Bartlett's jumping on board with their middle school, as is Kent Middle School and Jackson K5. And we're also doing, K6, I'm sorry, and also doing a pilot with Career Tech and a few of the core academic courses at the high school. So it's a nice, consistent approach to measuring student achievement.
Thank you. Anything else, Amy? No? Questions?
I will be quick because I know we're on a time limit, but I did want to just highlight a few things. A good plug for our fall school meeting happens every Thursday morning at 8:35, and it's open to our community members. We'd love to have you join us. It's an awesome opportunity to see what we're doing. And then you're invited, if you'd like, to join us for chorus right after. And we did have some community members stay for chorus. It's awesome. A lot of the staff stays. We enjoy it. So if you're around on Thursday mornings, please join us in the Whitney Community Center. We'd love to see you. Just an informational that in a routine Siemens check, we did find out that we're going to need a new boiler in the Whitney Center. So that did come up at the end of last week. That boiler right now is shut down, so we will need to get a new boiler for the Whitney. It was on our list, looking at 5 years, but it's going to be quicker than that. So that's just informational for the board, and we're working under the policy to see who's going to be able to replace that. As far as hiring, we're still looking for a part-time PE teacher. Right now that is being covered, it's going well. I'm doing lesson plans for that, so kids are getting the full PE experience with some great substitutes. Our enrichment assistant, we're still looking for that, but Susan and I are also helping with that position in the afternoons. The ELL tutor is an open position and a reading specialist, but I feel like we are well staffed. So that's been great. Also, just a couple new exciting community outreaches we've been doing. I met with Eric Samia from the AMC to one of his main roles is trails training programs. So we're kind of exploring new opportunities to utilize the outdoor space we have, and in this sense, it'd be in terms of
what we can do with trail building around the school and teaching the kids those kind of trades. So a little different than what we currently have at School Mountain and some other ANC programs, but we met with myself and Christina Campa, who's a parent volunteer, and there's really some exciting opportunities we're looking at there, so we're pretty excited about that. And also met with the Mount Washington Observatory Educational Component to continue our relationship with them throughout the year, so that was really exciting. And I could go on and on, but for now, that's what I have.
Well, I
Unless you have any
do
questions.
want to thank you for your reports. They're really helpful. They let us think about things ahead of time, and I'm very excited to see everything that's happening. So thank you both. Does anyone else have anything to say?
Yeah, I'm so glad to know that information and so impressed. I know that my daughter, one of the big highlights of her 6th grade year was the time that they spent on the trails in the woods. And so I think that it's just a wonderful thing that you're building on that and expanding it.
We're pretty excited. There's some great opportunities out there. And, I know I won't give the right name for it, but the Career Tech has a new class, environmental.
It's the outdoor recreation program, so there's obviously a great industry here in New Hampshire for outdoor rec, so they created a program at the Career Tech Center that's introducing the kids to all of the aspects of that field of work.
So I talked to Eric too about seeing how we can make that connection with our K-6 kids, possibly with the high school in that industry. So we're excited about that.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a few brief items to get through for this meeting, and Barrett has kindly said he would hold for us so that we could get to something he taught us a lot about, which is citizen comments. Thank you for that, Barrett. We're going to go ahead and just try to finish up our work here so that we can then convert to the presentation on tuition options. The next item here is some community reports. So many of you were here for the 5 o'clock meeting on the high school options committee, and so just a few items. We are really working hard to communicate with folks, and that seems to be working. We're getting a lot of feedback from people in a variety of forms, and one of the things that came out of our last meeting is Allison Brennan created a mailing list for folks that we will try to keep you updated on. Anything that goes into that mailing list will be public information. It's just another way we're going to be getting that to you. So, and it will just be for this short sprint while we're trying to keep people informed of what's happening. So if we do have information to share, it will just be one other place where the same information will be placed. It's still going to be on the SAU website, and thank you, Emily, for the kind words that you were able to find it now, so we're very happy about that.
Awesome.
So we are trying to do that, but you should always feel free to contact any of us. Obviously, it's if you're working, you can call me or email me and whatnot, but I did want to just remind folks that on October 21st at 5 o'clock, we'll be having our next high school options meeting. At 6 o'clock, we'll be having a regular school board meeting. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll be having a meet and greet with both Kevin Carpenter, the principal of Kevin High School, and Joe Manning, who is the head of Freiburg Academy. And we're really looking forward to that. Sasha Tracy is managing that, actually facilitating that conversation, and she's working with both of those leaders to make it a really nice night for folks to just see who the people are in our community and to hear from them themselves, which is something we've been working hard at bringing to everyone. And one of the ways we've done that is to try to get information directly to folks through this rubric that we had filled out. And so that information is available as public information as well. It is unfiltered. The committee has not done anything with it, so that is something you all can have access to, and we will be moving forward. Michael Curtis, one of our members, gave a presentation tonight, as many of you know, on some of the financial implications of various options, and that is readily available as well. And so we'll be figuring out what to do with that, because there's still a lot more information to be gathered. A big piece of what we learned tonight is that we still need to gather more information, including about special education, special services, as well as transportation, which James is working on. So if you have questions, if you have input, we welcome it. Please participate. We're happy to have that. I think it's making the process a lot better. We all think it's making the process a lot better. So that's the very brief update on that. And besides that, I think we covered personnel already. So we'll move on to the Jackson Wellness Committee member need. We are required to have a member on the Jackson committee, and so we're looking for someone who might be interested in sitting on that. Is anyone available or interested in sitting on that wellness committee? I thought we had someone, but I think we did not. So we have a committee right now. It's SAU 9 Jackson Health and Wellness. So is anyone
How often does it meet?
It's like 3 or 4 times, so we're pretty active and we're a fun group.
3 or 4 times a year?
3 or 4 times a year.
I'll do it.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Linda. Yeah, and if you want the group, yes.
Okay.
So, all right, so I'm happy to serve as a backup. That's one of the things we've been trying to do is to make sure that we're getting good representation because it's a small board and we're all so busy. We're trying to put more than one person on these committees so that we can get there, get the information, and we're back. So, thank you, Melinda. Okay. All right, date for the next school board meeting. We just talked about that, October 21st at 6 p.m. The High School Options Committee, 5 o'clock p.m. We do need to set a date for the next Bartlett-Jackson Joint School Board meeting. Right now, it is scheduled for October 21st at 5:30 p.m. And I think it's important for us to consider this given the other meetings that we've set for that time. And I just want to hear from you all how you want to handle this because we have a number of meetings and obviously we have a conflict at this point.
Can we move it?
I don't know. I'm wondering if, I think it's important we meet with them. I'm wondering,
Can that just be moved to the next month? Just because we're not going to give it its due if we're
So,
squishing
I mean,
it.
that's set for
5:30.
5:30, which is before our regular meeting, right?
Right, we have the high school options meeting at 5.
Oh, and so you'd have to conclude that by 5:30 for that.
Just feels like a lot. And then we're
Well,
gonna-
I'm just wondering if would Bartlett want to be here that evening for?
Well, I'm hoping, I think there may be members in the audience, so I would like to, I'm hoping we can invite them to be there, to be here that night anyway, but I would still like to set up a time where we can meet as 2 groups, anyway, to communicate. So what would you guys think if I got in touch with their chair and we set up another meeting perhaps?
Yeah,
Would that be okay?
Just speaking from a point of personal selfishness, I have to be out of town that night, and I'd really like to be able to participate in the joint meeting. And so if it was possible that Bartlett was willing to accommodate us by scheduling a meeting for a different night so that I could participate, that would be great.
So I think what we traditionally do is the fall meetings we have here and the spring meeting we have in Bartlett. If we're the ones asking for it to be rescheduled, would we be willing to have the fall meeting in Bartlett too, if that's easier for them for some reason?
Maybe potentially the, sorry, November 5th, Bartlett has a regular board meeting. Just to throw it out there as a possible option.
Yeah. How
It's a
about-
Tuesday instead of a Monday. or
Yeah,
whatever.
but you can still figure
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah,
Just
that's okay.
who
Yeah,
they
I
were
mean,
with that.
I think the more flexible, we'll get in touch with them and see if we can do that. Okay, so we'll shoot for that 5th and see if that works for them, and we'll try to move that. But and to the point of hopefully they would be here, I do just want to say it is very humbling to be on this side of the table for those who have not been over here. There was a steep learning curve, especially my first year as chair, and I'm very grateful for the folks who are kindly sharing improvement ideas. It is really helpful when we have you here at meetings and when you're participating. So we welcome that. And for those of you who are from other boards, we're very glad to have you here because this is very difficult. And in the end, I think we're all just trying to figure out what we're doing for our kids, whether it's the High School Options Committee decision or any of the decisions. And we really are one valley, and hopefully we're all thinking that. So I do want to thank you for being here. And Jerry and I are in agreement. We want you here. So I'm assuming that the other board members would also welcome that as well. And these are public meetings. So yeah, I just do want to say that. Thank you for that. Okay. Does the board have anything else to say or talk about before we turn it over to citizen comments? Citizen comments. And I will just remind you that we are really not meant to respond to them. So if we're not, it's not meant to be insulting or offensive. We're just going to take what you say and hopefully respond to it when we come back around or in another way.
I'm excited about Tin Mountain, whatever coming to do whatever they're gonna do in the woods out back. I think that's great. My son goes to Jackson River School and he loves to be outside, so I can't wait, and I'd be willing to help out with whatever. If we have like a family day of parents get together and work with whoever's coming, that'd be, I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Yes.
Are your microphones on? And I could hear you a lot better.
You just have to move it closer. I think they just have to be closer.
Yeah, they can be closer.
We'll work on that. Is that better? Is that good?
Talking
Is that better?
into it. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Wow, that's awful. Okay. I'm going to turn this over to Barrett soon, so he'll use that. Okay, we'll do that. We'll work on that. Anyone else? Okay. So we will close this meeting, and thank you for your patience. And maybe we'll just take a minute or two, and we'll turn this over to Barrett Christina, the Executive Director of the New Hampshire School Board Association. Thank you all. Motion to adjourn? Oh, don't we have to close it too? Oh, no? Oh, okay, then no. Forget that last part.
We don't want to adjourn because then we have to open a new meeting.
I thought we had to open up the special meeting, so. All right, Melissa, if you could make that one look good, that last part. Don't let them see that I closed it. Just keep it going. Okay.
Wherever you want, we're being closed.
Thank you.